I want you to not misdiagnose this phase, this step as something going wrong, and start recognizing that you're on the path. This is the path to be unshakable, and you do not get to skip it. If you skip it, you do not build the relationship with yourself to be able to trust yourself to fall over, which means you'll never get to feel confident.
Basically, I came in today and was telling Beck about last night and all of the things that went wrong last night, and then how I responded to those things going wrong. And she was like, "Oh my God, it's happening." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "Oh, the phases."
The best case scenario is that things don't run perfectly and you show up to that in the most impactful way. And that is what being unshakable is. It allows you to show up to imperfect situations and create the most impact. I respect myself enough to bring this to coaching so that I can change it. And I can't tell you how, I think that is one of the most impactful services of Dare Darling.
Hello, my beautiful friends. My name is Dr. Beck.
And I am Christine Barker, and this is Am I Doing It Wrong? A podcast for doctors by doctors. Every week on the pod, we'll be bringing you conversations which shine light in dark places, normalise the doctor journey, ease unnecessary suffering, and give you actionable steps to thrive in all facets of your life. So grab a cuppa and get cozy for this week's episode of Am I Doing It Wrong? The podcast for doctors by doctors.
All right, our beautiful friends, our Dr. Humans, welcome back to the potty. We're so happy to have you here. And I am feeling a bit of a glow, a bit of a triumph, a bit of feels like alignment and pride today as we are tributing this episode to a celebration of 1 year of Dare Darling, our group coaching program for doctors, where I take doctors who feel not good enough, never good enough, and I teach them how to be unshakable. And this is the most fulfilling, incredible work that I have ever done. I love working with my one-on-one clients, but you guys as a group, you guys getting together as a group is magic. It is something that I can't do by myself in a one-on-one scenario. I can't create the situation, the soft place to fall, the strong place to land that comes with this group of women in medicine doing the hard things together, being real together, and then rising together. I can't create that just by myself in a one-on-one situation. So I'm so in love with this group. I am in love with every one of our members. And I just spent my email for the start of the month gushing about how bold and audacious the work is right now in the program. And not everybody's been in the program for a year. Some people have only been in the program for probably several months now, though. And I think that's probably really what happens. You come in and you're a bit trepidatious, you hold back a little bit, you're like feeling out the space. And then when you start to see everybody else doing the work and you start to see yourself doing the work, you become more and more bold, more and more audacious with what you bring to coaching. And you start seeing yourself solving problems and becoming this new person. You start seeing how it's possible and what's possible with this work. So naturally that motivation builds. And so I'm here gushing in this email for our 1 year. It wasn't actually about our 1 year anniversary. It was just our monthly email. I'm gushing like, gosh, you guys are really bringing it in our sessions lately. And I got the realization in that moment, but they probably feel like they are shaking in their boots doing this work. They're probably feeling vulnerable and exposed and like they're in the middle and they're like, am I going to make it to the end? Am I going to make it to the other side? That's probably the reality of how our members are feeling doing this really audacious work, doing this vulnerable, hard work. And there's this kind of mismatch, I imagine, of how our members are feeling versus the triumph that I'm projecting, because I know what that work begets. I know what that work precedes. I know that doing this very work is the one and only way to be unshakable, as opposed to, I think, what a lot of us want the journey to be, which is I'm in what I call phase 0. I'll tell you about the phases in this episode. Phase 0 of not wanting to take action, being in action, being still stuck, stagnant, but being safe, right? Doing what you've always done. And we want to go from here to confidently taking action. And it does not happen. That is not available. The way to get to what I call phase 2, unshakable action, is to do exactly what my members are doing right now. And not everybody is willing to do that. Not everybody is willing to do it, to step into it and then stay in it like these guys are. They're stepping into it and they're coming back and they're troubleshooting and they're working and they're exploring what's going on. They're curious. They're like, okay, what's the next piece? Where am I going here? Because they're no longer, in that sort of fragile situation of, I'm going to try this thing once, and if it doesn't work, then I'm just going to say it didn't work and back off. They're in that phase of, I see the way forwards. I see what I'm capable of. I want what I'm capable of. And so I'm going to be in this, what I call phase 1 of taking action, shaking, action, taking, shaking, action, taking when all the stuff comes up that was stopping you from taking action in the first place. So with this 1-year anniversary of Dear Darling University, Christina showed up in the most unshakable way. I'm gushing now deliberately at her hearing this story. And we just thought it'd be a really great opportunity to show you what it really looks like to be unshakable, truly unshakable, as opposed to what we think makes us unshakable, which is doing everything perfectly and getting our confidence from this supposed fact that we know that everything's going to go perfectly and we're going to do everything perfectly. Christine, without further ado, without further gushing, because I can't stop myself right now, could you please tell us about this talk that you did literally last night? And I can't wait to use this as an example of what's possible for everyone if you decide to take on this unshakable journey.
Yeah. And first of all, though, congratulations on Dear Darling. It's just so beautiful. I can't believe it's a whole year. So I've been in it since the beginning and it's been a whole year. And I think everything that you just said was also amazing, like these phases. So basically, I came in today and was telling Beck about last night and all of the things that went wrong last night, and then how I responded to those things going wrong. And she was like, "Oh my God, it's happening!" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "Oh, the phases." And she has these phases, and she says that phase 0 is when you're not taking any action because you're too scared to. Phase 1 is when you're taking action, but it feels shaky and terrible and you're worried about what's going to go wrong. And then phase 2 is being unshakable. And she was breaking it down and I was like, oh, that's so fun because that definitely happened. I did all 3 phases or last night, basically. So I think it's just a beautiful example to break down these phases because I just think it's pure genius. And I'm so grateful for Dear Darling as well. I can definitely attribute this sequence of events to Dear Darling, but I think it's only when you do it and you show up and things do go wrong and then you get to see, oh, I didn't respond like I used to respond. And then you get to see that this is happening. So it's beautiful. So thank you so much, Beck. But yeah, so last night, oh my goodness, I've been in the middle of delivering my course for the clinical exam. And so I've been very, very busy. I don't like to use that word, but I've been busy. It's been like my number 1 priority. But I got asked a few weeks ago, I had released like a YouTube video on ChatGPT and medical education. And then one of the drug company people had seen it and they were like, oh, can you come and do this talk on artificial intelligence for doctors and how it can save them time? And I'm like, sure. It felt like a full body hell yeah, I was game. But the truth was, as it got closer to the day, I really hadn't had a lot of time to prepare. I hadn't had a lot of time to rehearse. I was also just really tired from having delivered the program. And I was like, how am I going to do this? So there was all this kind of not a lot of lead time. There was not a lot of room for perfectionism. Then on the night I delivered it, so yesterday was Tuesday, and I do a full clinical day on Tuesday. I'm up at 5, I start with the registrars at 7:30, and then I do 2 clinics, and then, the day. I was doing this as an evening presentation, and I'm thinking, how am I going to do this with energy-wise? And I get to the end of the day, I finish my clinic and I'm like, I better just run through these slides. And I kid you not, I was running through it in this clinic room by myself. And I was just, it was like I was having a stroke. Do you know what I mean? It's like when you press record on the thing and you just suddenly you cannot talk. And I was like, I've got to present this coherently in about an hour's time. Like, this is not a good sign. So I was in my head about it. I was like, well, that was a disaster. So anyway, I try and not get all the nuts and bolts out, get all the nerves out. And then I'm driving there and I'm literally thinking, I don't think anyone wants this talk. And I don't really know a lot about AI in the grand scheme of things. Like, I'm just playing with it and everyone's probably using it already and no one wants to hear this. And oh my God, who am I to stand there and talk about AI? What is this reality? And then I just I'm putting music on. I'm trying to like calm down my nervous system because I'm getting in my head. And then I start to talk to myself. This is obviously what happens when you go to Dare Darling. It happens subconsciously. You have those kind of thoughts, and then you'll be like, now I need to think in a new way. So then I started thinking, oh, no, that's fine. I've already won. They invited me to come. I'm going to go, and then I'm going to get paid. And so I win. And that's it. And that's what's going to happen. And you're just going to do your best. And then I started telling myself, I've done presentations before, and all these like nice feeling thoughts. And so I was talking myself into doing the talk and being calm whilst doing the talk, which probably sounds funny to people because I do a lot of public speaking, but I just didn't have a lot of lead time for this one. And I was feeling very vulnerable about it. And the topic is not something that I talk about often or whatever. So anyway, and this is in a room full of my colleagues. So this is all of the nephrologists across town. So it's not like an audience where you're never going to see them again. This is like, I will see them again and they'll remember. If this goes badly, they're going to remember. So, there was lots of reasons that I was feeling vulnerable about it. But then when it happened, like when we actually did the talk, it's like you go into presentation mode and you're just there and you're just serving the audience and it's just about them. But I've lost count of all of the things that went wrong. Everything with the mic wasn't working. Then the video wasn't synced with the audio and those kind of things. But then the moment that I really realized that this thought work stuff was impacting me was when I was supposed to do like a demonstration with ChatGPT in audio mode right at the end of the presentation. And I'd checked it before I went on and it was working. But for some reason, I don't know why, the microphone part of my laptop had stopped responding to me. So I started talking. You just imagine I've got the microphone, there's a group of 50 people looking at me, and I say to my chat GPT, hey, Sparks, we're here, we're live with this beautiful audience. Do you want to say hello? And it says nothing at all, blank. And I don't know how to fix it. So I'm just like, okay. And the whole point was that I was supposed to be like demonstrating this thing. So it was quite funny actually, because anyway, it was such a major fail and all these people are watching me and ChatGPT has given me nothing in this moment and I don't know how to fix the microphone issue in a heartbeat. And so then I have to turn around and do something. And I just turn around and I'm like, see, I told you guys I was a pen and paper girl. I don't know anything about how to fix that. Anyway, moving on. Why don't we just have a discussion? So then I start roaming around with the microphone, getting everyone involved and just continued like nothing bad had happened. Where when I really was thinking about it with you this morning, when I was telling you the story, like past me would have been like dying inside in front of people and this thing's not working. And I would have went into panic mode and my nervous system would have been activated. And it just wasn't my experience. I was cool as a cucumber in the face of everything. And that was like, there was more things that went wrong, lots more during the presentation, but it just didn't faze me for some reason. And then it's puzzling, but then when you break it down into these phases, it's just that, yeah, that the thought work, you've just showed up so much, making mistakes and realizing that nothing bad happens. And then in that moment where something bad, inverted commas, happens that would normally be a disaster to you, you're just somehow able to manage it. So that was what happened last night. And it's super, super funny and so relatable. I'm sure that many of you listening will have had similar situations. But yeah, I know that past version of me would have just been so mortified. I would have maybe even cried after it if past version of me.
I think that the unspoken thing here is that took you into phase 2 is although, yeah, there's a part of you who is like, I don't want things to go wrong. Of course, I want things to go smoothly. Yes, of course, those thoughts are normal. But the end of that sentence is now different for you when you're in phase 2, being unshakable. The end of that sentence, it used to be, if things go wrong, it's very bad. If things go wrong, I'm not going to cope. If things go wrong, the presentation's going to be ruined. The presentation's going to be a waste of time. I'm going to regret doing this. I'm going to regret whatever, I'm investing this time in it or putting myself out there, whatever. But that's the end of the sentence for somebody who's in phase 0 or phase 1. But when you're in phase 2, being unshakable, the end of that sentence is things might go wrong, something might go wrong, and I'm going to be okay. Things might go wrong and I might be hurt, like emotionally hurt. Nobody wants to feel embarrassment. Worst feeling ever. Worst feeling ever. I actually think embarrassment is worse than shame. I don't know. Let's not make the emotions compete with each other. But when I think about embarrassment, it's this very exposed, public, shameful feeling too, isn't it? But the recognition is things can go wrong. And this is probably more phase 1, but I will get embarrassed. But somebody who's in phase 2 can even say, I could have a moment of being embarrassed and it still doesn't hurt me. It's just an emotion. It doesn't stop me. And that's what allows you, and this is the crazy thing, guys, we want so badly to make everything run perfectly that when it doesn't run perfectly, we then wound ourselves in the moment. We then hurt ourselves in the moment. And that makes things, you're up there and you're having a thought of like, this is very bad. That makes you perform worse. As opposed to Christine in this unshakable action, something goes wrong, right? If her brain is still calling it, that's fine, because that's quite neutral to her, actually. Something goes wrong. Oh, okay, next, right? Her brain didn't then make that mean anything more than this blip in time where this thing didn't work. And she was just like, next. She didn't go internally into a thought spiral. She didn't add me meaning about how, now the presentation's ruined. Now my colleagues going to think, blah, blah, blah. Now I can't be saved at this point. This is so embarrassing, whatever it might be. That would be the normal dialogue for most of us, right? But because she has gone through phase 1, she's had all those thoughts come up in the past. Not only the thoughts come up, questioning them, but she's let herself be in situations of embarrassment and realized, wow, that's not as bad as I thought. Wow, this doesn't hurt me. Wow, this isn't something that I can't handle. And she's let herself also, next step here in phase 1, you take action, you feel embarrassed. Maybe you do go and have, that catastrophizing, spiraling event of going on to actually ruin the presentation because now you're like paralyzed and believing that everything's going wrong and you give up in that moment or you try and overcompensate. And then also you watch yourself recover from what you would call a disaster and get back up again. This is the one and only path to phase 2 being unshakable. It's going through phase 1 where you actually put yourself in those situations of shaking and being shaken. And then the key is in phase 1, what you do is you watch yourself handle it. You let yourself disprove that what you were afraid of is actually something to be afraid of. You show yourself time and time again that actually what you're afraid of is just a function of underestimating yourself and not taking ownership in that moment of what is in your control and how you can make things better for yourself again if you think that you've taken a step backwards. And the thing is, when people start doing any self-development work, but what I see in coaching is we start, you'll get up to that first presentation and like something will go wrong. And then with that, of course, all of those old practice thoughts that build on that anxiety and they trigger your nervous system and they catastrophize and they actually make things worse, that is going to come up. But we make the mistake of thinking that you've done it wrong and something's going wrong in that moment and that it didn't work, as opposed to recognizing this is the information that I needed about myself. We can do it back in phase 0 when we're not taking action. We can explore our thoughts with different journal prompts and different coaching situations and thought experiments, things. We can feel our emotions and practice feeling our emotions. We can do all that phase 0 work. That is really powerful. And also a part of it, as you said, Christine, is putting yourself in that situation and genuinely seeing, exploring what actually comes up for me in this situation. That's the information you need. The stuff that makes you shake, that is the information you need to get unshakable, right? And then this is like the next level is you literally get an opportunity to build evidence of having a great relationship with yourself. You get the evidence that shows you, I can trust myself. It's okay to fail because I take care of myself in this moment. It's okay to fall over because I get back up. That evidence of seeing that happen to you and seeing yourself treat yourself in the way that serves you in that moment, that is priceless phase 1 work. So, somebody without the self-awareness of what it really looks like to succeed and be successful and what it takes to be successful could look at Christine's scenario and be like, we could self-assess in this scenario, but went wrong. Like there was a tech failure. I didn't prepare as much as I ideally wanted to, but you can list off all these reasons and be like, okay, so it wasn't the best. It wasn't a good situation. But this situation to me is the ideal situation, because the truth is Christine has been serving in Rock Your Long case for the last 2 months intensely. She did not want to give any of she didn't have any surplus time or any time that she wanted to take from that most precious program for her BPTs. She didn't want to take any of that time and give it to this talk. That's the truth. And so the truth is she wanted to show up without the preparation. And she wanted to show up, and you just have to show up, not being able to correct every tech thing that happens and da-da-da-da-da. So we don't want to be mistaken that the best case scenario here is that everything runs perfectly, quote, perfectly. The best case scenario is that things don't run perfectly and you show up to that in the most impactful way. And that is what being unshakable is. It allows you to show up to imperfect situations and create the most impact. I'm so worried I've gone on an absolute what am I? I've got my pedestal and my microphone and I'm like, everyone unshakable. You need to stop me, Christine. But I'm like, it's such an important message, because I think we so easily call ourselves a failure because of how the situation goes, when what I want my clients to be focusing on is how they show up in these situations that are inevitable in life. You just don't get to live a life where you do everything perfectly. If you do, it's going to be a very small life, right? Of over-preparing and overworking and being unbalanced in that way, and never actually really taking risks, never reaching your potential, never seeing what you're really made of, never really impressing yourself because you're too busy trying to control the situation. Instead, what Christine has done is she's shown up and served even when she had so little resources, because she was unshakable. And so she knew in herself that even if things didn't go perfectly, she could still serve. And just think about the impact that Christine's going to have in her life with that kind of mindset about opportunities.
Yeah, and it's almost like listening to this and reflecting on this, I feel like there's so much other stuff that comes up here that's really good. I think that being on a stage and something going wrong, first of all, I think it's important to realize that you can set the tone, which I guess I didn't really conceptualize as something I was doing last night, but because I was okay with the sort of main event going wrong and not being able to speak to ChatGPT and just pivoting, but feeling so comfortable and lively with that and not looking upset. Like, I feel like people in the audience would be so uncomfortable if I was uncomfortable, and it would have ruined anything that I'd done there, because the presentation went fairly well, right? And it was very engaging and everyone was involved. And so it would have totally, like you say, ruined what had happened if I had reacted differently. But it's not like you would choose to react in a negative way. You don't choose for your nervous system to be activated. But it's such a gift to be able to say, I'm still okay. And so the whole audience gets to be okay. Like, you're actually helping everyone else have a good time. So it's really funny. But also, I think, I don't know what phase it happens in, but there must be a disconnection from like yourself. Like, you can see that the computer wasn't doing what it was supposed to be doing in the moment. And whilst I have a responsibility, I did check it beforehand, and I do have a role in getting that tech operating. Like, it's not that as me. And I think that there was a part of previous me would have connected, oh God, this is going wrong. Oh God, everyone's going to think this about me. I'm so embarrassed. I'm ashamed. There's something wrong with me. And I think that sounds like a weird thing to say right now, but I think that there's a disconnection between the scenario and you. And I think I can see that distance now. Like, just because ChatGPT didn't do what I asked it to do doesn't then make me somehow like a terrible public speaker or whatever. But I feel like past version of me, you would have been like, oh my God, like, I'm dying up here. I can't do this.
This is the thing. Like, when you say these thoughts out loud, it sounds like, of course, they're not related. If ChatGPT didn't do the thing it was meant to do, like, I had a tech glitch, right? But what doctors will do, my perfectionists and people who have imposter syndrome, who come in with this primary idea and self-concept of not good enough. And therefore, like, when things go wrong, it's probably because I'm not good enough. Like, you're the first person to point the finger at. So it sounds, and this is why coaching is so powerful. When you say it out loud, you're like, yeah, it's not related to me. And I love that it's just obvious to you right now. But as you're saying, there are past versions of us that wasn't obvious to, because when we come in with this mindset of not good enoughness, and imposter syndrome is how people understand it, we'll take a tech issue And then we'll pull out all of our responsibility in that. We'll be like, somebody who was smarter than me, somebody who was good enough, they would have known to triple check it. They would have projected forwards about all the possible things could have gone wrong. A responsible person would have done this. They would have projected forwards all the possible things that could have gone wrong. Or maybe they would have done this talk before in another, make up a scenario like, if I was doing this talk, not for the first time ever, if I was doing it for the second time, and because I was a more competent or prolific speaker or something like that, then this wouldn't have happened. We desperately go in there, our brain has come in with this premise, this hypothesis that we're not good enough and we're to blame. There's something this proves there's something wrong with us. And we find it. We will find reasons every time. And this is the thing, your brain will offer you a little explanation. It'll answer the question that you're asking it. How does this show that I'm not good enough? It'll answer that, but you might not hear it. You might not hear it. And that is why I am so obsessed with people looking at their thoughts. Because I know personally, even after doing this work for, a decade or something on myself, in at least a decade on myself, I know that I can't hear the thoughts that are happening. And the only reason that I am constantly suspicious of my thoughts is because I'll notice emotions that come up and I'm like, why am I feeling shame or fear in this moment? It must be because there's a thought there, but also your behavior. Why am I suddenly withdrawing from this situation? Why am I not showing up like Christine in this moment and just pushing on everything's good and I'm a valuable person with valuable things to offer this group? It's because your brain, it's perceiving the situation as something being wrong with you in this scenario. So I love this example too, because it actually shows how, on one hand, when you speak the thoughts out loud, just that, even if you didn't have a coach to sit there and question you, even if you just let yourself see more of your thoughts, that's an opportunity for you to be like, oh, wait a second, I don't believe that. There's actually no problem here. Just that. Christine gives me that all the time. On the podcast too, I have these ahas, just with Christine, having somebody hold this non-judgmental space for you. And then also in coaching, you've got somebody who they're holding your highest potential in their mind and they're looking specifically for these thoughts that are potentially self-sabotaging and holding you back.
Yeah, I think that is the benefit of having a coach. And even if you don't have one, you were saying, but I think that is the benefit. It's a cumulative thing. You've coached me, but I've also watched other people be coached. And there's this cumulative thing where your brain has a archive of bad scenario, you think something's going wrong. Actually, is all that going wrong? Actually, no. And you do it quicker than you can't hear it happening. Last night that must have happened. I was like, oh dear goodness, this is happening. But very quickly, I don't know how many seconds it would have been, and now we're pivoting. But I didn't have any thoughts. It was just a reaction. But exactly. I think that was literally a year of training on what you're talking about. But then it happens for you in a heartbeat, not thinking about it anymore.
And that's my experience too. I'm not going around monitoring my thoughts all day long. It's not how it works. But gradually over time, it becomes the way that you subconsciously can drive a manual car. You change the way you view the world over time and being exposed to people. And I think that's why, one of the reasons why I think group coaching is so valuable, because I can sit here till I'm red in the face and tell people, challenge what is true and present different perspectives and tell people that actually you're not the only one, even though so many of us come with this sort of it's just me. Why am I struggling with this? But when you get to see your colleagues, and the really cool thing about Dear Darling is it's all doctors. So the people that you're seeing go through the same stuff as you, these are the most competent, capable, resourceful people in the world. And they've also got that same moral, compassionate, caring, empathetic, human focus to them as well. So you're just surrounded by people who really are just like you and they're impressive to you. And watching them in these same situations, watching them solve these problems, it's magic. And that's why I'm so incredibly grateful to our members. And I'm so excited seeing them in this phase 1 work, because I know how difficult it is. When we talk on the podcast and I share my thoughts about, I used to think this, or right now I'm thinking this, or I recognized in the moment I was thinking this. I don't know. I'm thinking we just did an episode on people pleasing. Amazing episode. Go and listen to that if you are struggling with giving up the people pleasing. It's got some really tough love in there and some truths that can potentially change you. But I still have moments in my life where I recognize in the moment, I'm people pleasing. And to just admit that to myself, let alone to share it with somebody else, it doesn't feel easy. It doesn't feel good because I'm recognizing a moment of me not being in my integrity. But to your point, Christine, before, like I've stopped and still a little bit of work to not make that mean something about my character or my personality. And in Dear Darling, everybody's doing that. All these incredible, impressive women are like walking the talk of, I'm doing this behavior. This is coming up for me. This is what I'm believing. And literally by sharing it, they're simultaneously saying to everybody, and this isn't something for me to be ashamed of. This isn't something that I am going to hide from for myself. In fact, the opposite, I respect myself enough to bring this to coaching so that I can change it. And I can't tell you how, like, I think that is one of the most impactful services of Dare Darling. It's the antithesis of shame. When we hide from something, we are stuck with it. We push it down and we keep it locked in ourselves. We keep it locked in our repertoire of how we respond to the world. And when you bring it to coaching, when you stop hiding from it, you're giving yourself the one and only way to change it and be different. And what stops us from doing that is believing those shame thoughts. And when you watch other successful, incredible women, and that's why I'm just gushing with the level of vulnerability and audacity of the work that they're doing and what they're asking for themselves. Like we're challenging things like getting negative feedback, failing publicly, people pleasing. We're talking about relationships in Dare Darling as well, because they are a part of being a doctor as well, whether they're professional relationships, but also personal relationships. We're talking about all this stuff specifically because we're wanting more for ourselves, for our lives. We want to see ourselves show up in a bigger, bolder version. So the trouble is phase 0, phase 1, phase 2. Phase 2 is unshakable action. This is when you're like, things can be going wrong. You can be in the worst case scenario. And then you have Christine Swan in. She handles this worst case scenario to anybody else who'd be mortified by the situation. She handles it in a way that literally says to everybody, nothing's going wrong here. We're still good. Like we're good. That is phase 2 unshakable. In the people pleasing situation, you cannot hurt me. You cannot manipulate me. Will not hide myself. Phase 2, it's being invulnerable. It's being anti-fragile. It's actually being alive and participating in the world, no longer believing that you need protection. Phase 2. Phase 0, the very first phase where we start, and we do coaching work in phase 0. Phase 0 isn't a negative judgment. It's just that in phase 0, you're not taking action. It's pre-action, right? And we're usually not taking action because we feel unsafe, right? Phase 0 is inaction and an emotional state of safety. And you're probably even thinking thoughts like, I don't want to do the presentation if it's not going to be perfect. Like you genuinely don't want to do it. You're sitting there and you're like, I don't want to do it because to you, the risks are so much greater than the potential payoffs. That would be like Christine thinking that something going wrong and me not being up to like spit my words out, me embarrassing myself in front of my colleagues thinking less of me. That is more important, more risky compared to how I could serve and how I could show up and who I could be in this moment. And that's where a lot of us are. No judgment. This is a very common place to be in phase 0. Phase 1, where all the goodness happens that I'm gushing about in Dare Darling, is taking action, shaking. Taking action with those fears and for the purpose of, like your new thought is, it's worth it. The emotion in this state is something like, it's brave, it's courageous. You don't feel safe anymore. You don't feel unshakable and secure and certain, but you're stepping into it with this kind of, it's worth it. I like my reasons for doing this. And I want to give myself the opportunity to be a different person here. But you feel at risk. And phase 1 is where, you do this presentation and maybe because you let those thoughts come up, you do have these moments where you can't spit a word out or you stumble over your words or your energy drops and everybody feels that and sees that. And then so shaking, doing it. And then after the fact, you go into this rumination spiral of, oh, and these people are going to think this about me and I'm never going to be invited back again. And I just regret doing this altogether. That was such a waste of time as well. And now I'm exhausted. Those thoughts before, during, and after the action, they are your work. They become your curriculum. That is the work that we do in coaching. They are your ingredients to being unshakable. It's the information we need. And the way that you see yourself, treat yourself in phase 1 is the key ingredient to this new relationship with yourself, of self-trust, of knowing even if bad things happen, I can rely on myself. And that is what confidence is. Confidence cannot come from doing everything perfectly and knowing that you know the answer. That is fragile confidence. Instead, we're going for unshakability, anti-fragility, being anti-fragile, knowing that, yeah, there are risks in the world, but nothing can stop me.
Yeah, so good. And I just love the way you break it down into the phases, sorry. I've never really heard that before. I really, really like that because it almost feels like good to know where you are. Like, oh yeah, I'm in the inaction stage, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be here forever. I'm just going to go into phase 1. And oh, phase 1's not meant to feel good. Oh, great. That's exactly where I am. Tank.
That's the most important thing. And that's really the message that I had for our Dear Darling crew, that I don't want you to misinterpret the fact that you're action taking, shaking, that it feels bad. Don't use that as a reason to exit. That would be the greatest loss. Like, you were bold enough to step into phase 1 out of phase 0, out of safety. Now know that this is where the transformation is. This is where you show yourself. This is where you become unshakable. And that is the main message. Thank you so much. You're going to go from feeling good, phase 0, you feel great because you're just sitting there in theory, you're not taking any risks. Phase 1 feels the worst, but you push through phase 1 to phase 2, and then you get to show up like you in that situation. And there's no better case scenario to me than how you showed up last night. That's it. That is like, when we do that, we are living our best life and we are having the most impact and we are able to be the most authentic.
Yeah. But I also would say that, yes, you can just go through something, find it hard in phase 1, and you pick up those ruminating thoughts and things. But to be completely transparent, we have voice messages, right? And so whenever I'm going through something hard, or even when you're going through something hard like that, when we're doing a phase 1 thing, and this still happens currently, everyone, we still have phase 1 things for different things all the time, don't we, Beck? All the time. And we'll always be talking to each other and debriefing about it as well. And you might have friends that you debrief with, but I think phase 1, like in that recovery phase where you might have had a humiliation or an embarrassment from your perspective, even if it's not real, something might have gone very wrong in this, you've plucked up the courage to do something really like hard and scary, and then like it doesn't follow through perfectly. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it doesn't. And so I think just saying, surround yourself with support, whether that is coaching. Come to Dear Darling obviously is a great place to start, but I think phase 1 does need a little bit of other people who love you and hold your highest potential being there to support you. Because to not exit phase 1, yeah, there's been times where I've just been like, now I'm going to call it phase 1. I'll be like, Beck, I'm in phase 1. That's how I'm going to start now. But ordinarily, I'm just like, please help, send help. This has just happened. But I think it does take a village, phase 1.
I could not agree enough, because there's a barrage of thoughts and emotions that you've been hiding from. All these emotions that you didn't want to feel. Just think about the public speaking scenario, like the shame, the embarrassment, the like escalating anxiety. You've been safely avoiding them by staying in phase 0 and just believing, I don't want to do the talk. I don't want to do the talk unless I've had 2 weeks to prepare, kind of thing. I don't like, people say stuff like that sounds rational, but it's actually like, you are saying no because you are overestimating the consequences, because you haven't gone through phase 1 and started to let yourself learn the consequences aren't that high. And also that you're underestimating yourself and your ability to cope. So phase 1 is brutal. It's brutal. I love it. Thank you for saying that, Christine. I'm just going to give an example. This isn't actually my example, which is very cool. But like, actually, this is probably true. There are things in my relationship that maybe I don't ask for because I'm giving myself these safety feeling thoughts of, I don't want it because it would be, I don't know, too much of an imposition for them or something like that. And so I justify it in my mind and I believe I don't want it. But if you really break that down, I'm like, I'm afraid of the consequences, aren't I? I'm overestimating the consequences because they could just say no. They could just say no to the thing, but maybe I feel rejected in that scenario or something like that. There are places in my life where I'm in phase 0 and I'm not ready to do the work on yet. And I think you can only be in phase one in so many parts of your life because it's such hard work. And all those thoughts come up, all those emotions come up that you have to learn how to treat yourself well with. I'm known to send Christina like 14-minute voice message with all of my thoughts that are coming up. And also there are phases in my life, there are places in my life where I get to be in phase two. And I'm just so grateful for myself sticking it out in phase one. Also, Christine, there are places in my life where I'm brave enough to go into phase one and then I exit, right? Where I'm like, it's probably like a sneaky, subtle exit. And I'm like, because I'm really just saying, I can't tolerate being here. This feels too hard, too many thoughts that I can't work on, too many emotions that I don't want to feel. And I'll exit phase one early. And I just think that's the pity too. Like maybe sometimes it's not the right thing to do for my resources, but I think it's incredibly exhausting and wasteful to go from phase zero to phase one, phase zero to phase one, instead of just staying through phase one. Like you've already put yourself in that scenario. You've let the thoughts come up. You've let the emotions come up. Now, if we can just stay, as you're saying, usually with support, then we can actually make this worth it by getting to phase two.
Yeah, and can I just say as well, and this is just a little bit about something that I've come across recently, and I'm just thinking about anyone who's maybe sitting listening and they're thinking this would be great. They want to come on board and maybe they want to, we're talking about how Dear Darling has been around for a year now, and I know that you've just opened it up so that we can join around the clock anytime, which is wonderful. But I just wanted to say as well, like my CME actually covers Dear Darling, which I think is worth saying because I'm going to be continuing in it in the longer term, and I can see this impact on myself in a quite a short space of time, really, if I'm being honest. But my CME as a consultant covers it. And also something that I realized, I was like singing Beck's actual praises, like I was worshipping her. If anyone is part of the Royal College of Physicians, you have to do this CME thing every year, like a CPD thing, and it takes forever. But there's categories that I'm good at, like medical education, but I'm only allowed to claim so much. And then there's this other category that wants a lot of hours from me, and I don't relate to very much in it. And then I saw them as this box for coaching. And because you go every week, you just press coaching and then you just tell them that you go every Tuesday night. And then it's like, that whole section just goes away. I know that's probably not, what you want me to say, but it's the truth, man.
Look, it's a perk. It's good. CPD is, it's a little thing in the back of your mind, isn't it? I've actually just formalized Dear Darling being a CPD provider for RSCGP. And I just started with them because they seem to have a bit of a training program, because I wanted to make sure that Dear Darling does meet the standards and get some kind of formalized recognition that it is CPD appropriate. And it is. It's so exciting. Not only so reflective practice is probably the professional coaching box in general, but also depending on how you use the content in Dear Darling. So we rack up, like we will cover your reflective practice hours with ease, sorted, guys. But also, depending on the way that you use Dear Darling, you can also use it for measuring outcomes. I've learned this through the RSCGP training, because measuring outcomes is really about recognizing that, and it is really inherently what coaching is. People often think about it as like doing an audit or something like that. But you got to recognize that Dear Darling is addressing your professionalism and your ethical practice as a doctor. Like they're I can't remember what they're called, program requirements of our CPD work. And there's also, I can't remember the other two program requirements. But what it really requires is you to have a measuring outcomes activity. It requires you to pick a part of your practice. Here, it would be a part of your professionalism in your practice. Say an example could be speaking up, contributing more in meetings. Say that was something that you choose this. And one of the questions you need to answer is, how is this impacting my practice? And obviously speaking up more in professional discussions is improving patient care. It's adding to this discussion to make sure patient care is going in the most optimal, ideal way. And then the next step, I believe, is how am I going to evaluate or monitor my progress on this, or how am I going to measure it? So basically, in measuring outcomes, you need to pick a part of your practice that you'd like to see change. You have to identify why that is impactful to your practice as a doctor. And then we need to, for measuring outcomes, find a way to monitor that progress. So we could actually literally these don't have to be objective measures. They can be subjective measures. Like, how confident did I feel speaking up? Or it could be more quantifiable. How many times did I speak up in these settings? And then finally, how am I seeing my practice change? The point that I'm trying to make is the content that we have in Dear Darling, not only from the coaching calls and the goal setting, intention setting, identity work that we do, but also there's a whole on-demand curriculum, to the point that a very conservative measure of the hours that you can get from Dear Darling from CPD was 114 hours. And that was at the start of the year, right before I'd even clocked all these extra resources. We have video resources in general in Dear Darling, and then workbooks and worksheets that you can do if you want to take it further. And depending on how you use the content in Dear Darling, whether you use it as just educational practice or whether you then go and answer some reflective questions for your CPT provider to prove that this was a reflective activity for you, or whether you go and answer and action some of those more measuring outcomes questions, depending on how you use the content in Dear Darling, will depend on which category it falls into, because it is such a dynamic set of education that can be used in different levels. Thank you for mentioning CPD. I haven't had a chance to really talk about it so far. And ultimately, I think probably the most important thing to say is that as much as I've said all of this about what I've learned about CPD through doing this training, this was just specific to the RACGP training. And whether your CPD gets recognized and accepted ultimately comes down to your specific CPD home, and whether you can use your funds, your CPD funds from your hospital or from your practice for this also comes down to whether your specific healthcare service or practice is willing to approve the CPD hours for that use. So it all comes down to specifics, but in general, Dear Darling is ticking the boxes, and it's so exciting because I just feel like it's a win.
It definitely is. Taking the pain out of my life admin for real. But obviously I'm genuinely benefiting from it. But it just, yeah, I think it's worth saying, because obviously we all have that CPD requirement and the paperwork therein.
All right. So thank you guys so much for joining. I hope this has inspired you to see what is truly possible. And I hope, this can help you get off this endless and I think ultimately wasteful journey of just trying to make everything perfect and not showing up to situations and opportunities unless you can be fully prepared, and with that, over preparing, overworking, over giving, taking from other places in your life. And just keep this image of Christine in your mind where she's like, I'm not giving up an opportunity where I can serve people. No. And also, I'm not willing to steal any time from the other places I'm serving in my life. And therefore, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show up and serve without the requirement to be perfect. And what that requires is being unshakable, right? To be able to handle the moments where it goes imperfectly. So we've got to clean up all that perfectionism and imposter syndrome and people pleasing in your thoughts. And the second thing is recognizing that when you start doing this work, whether you come with us in Dear Darling and do it with us in Dear Darling, or whether you do it yourself, I want you to recognize and celebrate when you're coming out of phase 0, right? Believing that you just don't want to do it, believing that the risks are too high, being in inaction and therefore feeling safe. When you come out of phase 0 and you get into phase 1 and you feel terrible, you feel shaken. You are being shaken by the world, it feels, and you feel probably the furthest thing from confidence. I want you to not misdiagnose this phase, this step as something going wrong, and start recognizing that you're on the path. This is the path to be unshakable, and you do not get to skip it. If you skip it, you do not build the relationship with yourself to be able to trust yourself to fall over, which means you'll never get to feel confident. And if you skip it, you don't get to actually see what's making you shake. In phase 1, you see what makes you shake, because what makes Christine shake in these situations is different from what makes me shake. We need to do this work on ourselves. There's no cookie cutter Instagram quote solution to this. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you for celebrating a year of Dear Darling with us. Thank you so much, Christine, for all your kind words. I can't wait to see what Dear Darling creates in the world. And if you would like to join, I will pop a link down below so that you can put in an application and we can see if you're a match for our incredible special space. We'll see you guys soon.
I've been waiting all my life for something. I've been down the darkest roads and up